just so wonderful and blessed to know that we can be here, that we can get into your word, and we know that there is so much to be learned, that how we can become more like Christ, and we are so filled with how to become more like the world. And I pray, Father, that we can put those things aside, the biases that we come with, the preconceived thoughts of how it could or should be, but turn it into a way that it will be, because we have you as our guide. Lord, we know that the rudder is so small on a large ship that it can take some time, but I pray, Father, that as we see the rudder, we'll turn that huge vessel, maybe not on a dime, but over time. I pray, Father, that we'll all have patience with each other. We'll see the good in everything that we do, and we can take that which is misdirected and make it into a center of the target, Father, for our work with you at this here congregation. Help us, Father, as we go through the materials this next few more weeks on being an encourager, because if there's one thing that we know can happen is if we're here to encourage and not break down, that the church can grow, and it can grow in leaps and bounds, because, Father, you are the one that is in control, and you are giving the direction. We just need to find it through your word, have the courage to follow, and know that in all things you will bless us through your grace. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. So we continue to do the series on the Barnabas factor. The author, Aubrey Johnson, he's an educator, he's a minister, he's a professional speaker. It's on themes of leadership and abundant living. He has a doctorate in leadership and master of divinity to his pedigree. And he realizes that encouragement potential is in each and every one of us. And he presented his book, Barnabas Factor, was presented to 500 employees at Chick-fil-A. That's the author that we're working with. That's the information that we are putting out, coupled with the Word of God. He's now at the Old Hickory Church of Christ in East Nashville, where he is a full-time minister. When we look at and consider one another, there is but one area that we can always grow in, and that is the area of encouraging. There's nothing in this life that cannot be turned around into encouragement. Now, I will tell you right now that you can turn on the radio, and I've been doing that. There's only maybe 2 weeks of the year where I actually have the radio on in my vehicle, and it's right now, because you get in and the kids have turned it on, and there's maybe some of the seasonal music and all it's on, and it's in the air, right? A lot of excitement. But then the news comes on. And that's when I turn it off. I just don't listen to the news. I can't do it. When there was a newspaper, you would open up the newspaper, and there was a whole bunch of rows of black letters of negativity. Maybe there's a reason why they're in black. That's what we used to say. Now we don't have newspaper, so how do you do it, right? Well, then you open your phone, and you look at it and you read it there too. It's all around us. It's been maybe not every, but most generations, I'm sure, love to serve out the negativity. How encouraging is that? How encouraging is that? It's not hard to answer the question, not much, if at all. Now, when I say that, it takes a mind that is willing to become the encourager. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the mind of an encourager, the mind of encouragement. We keep on bringing up Barnabas, well, because it's the title of the book, Barnabas Factor. We bring up Barnabas because Barnabas didn't encourage by accident. He wasn't one that was about to do much for the congregations that was not encouraging. He had a mindset that he would encourage on purpose. And I think that there's many things that could be said just from that little phrase. I know, because I just did it on the way here, that there was some very, very, very discouraging things that occurred in the congregation back in Edmonton. And I'm going to share that with you because it's going to fit in with our class. In Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, I like what Shane said today on the way here. My wife and I mentioned a name in Canada this morning at the breakfast table. And yes, breakfast was very good. And if you want to have something repeat, you encourage. Okay, so I'll encourage you to know that it was a very good breakfast. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Shane. There's always tomorrow. And so, but the encouragement will help you to repeat things. And so we were talking about how at the Edmonton level within the church that there's a lot of discouragement. And Shane said, well, why don't we have, and he didn't know this happened, he became my illustration today. He says, why don't we have someone that can kind of counsel the church in Edmonton? And I looked at him, well, I didn't because I was driving at this point. I could have looked at him and said, you are so smart, right? But I didn't say that. I didn't do that. I was cautious on the road. I was encouraging good driving habits for my son, right? But I said to him, I said, you know what, son? They did. They had one. Matter of fact, you've met him. Scott Laird was the encourager for the church in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The church was hiring Scott to come and encourage the church into a pathway that was biblical, that was Christ-like, that it had all the potential to become what it had been when he was there as one of the ministers. The church absolutely exploded in Edmonton when Scott Laird was the minister there. It was one of his second, I think it was his second job that he had in the pulpit. And Scott and three others that were like phenomenal speakers, Albert and Greg, these names that were synonymous across Canada because they were getting invited to go encourage other congregations. It's the same thread we're talking about Barnabas today in Antioch. Encouragement is infectious. Well, the encouragement has been dwindled and dwindled and dwindled to 4 splits in the Edmonton church. You don't have splits when you have encouragement and accuracy. You can have a lot of encouragement, but you got to keep the accuracy and the truth. And that's also what we're going to talk about today with the church in Antioch. Because I've used that illustration a couple of times. I think Curtis, thanks for doing the class. Curtis, he touched on it as well, but you don't know what happened in Antioch. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But what happened with Scott is he knows, and he's been preaching not even about 7 hours from Edmonton. His congregation has 2 services because their building, which is not a bad-sized building, has had to grow and grow because of the encouragement there. And he brings in ministers, and he teaches them the role that he has done for years in encouraging the church and helping it grow. But Edmonton is shrinking and splitting and discouraging and shrinking and splitting on things that are not that important. They are to them so important they'll split with discouragement. So Scott goes back, and he's trying to build them back. Everett Hufford, another big name in Canada. He's from the U.S., but he has helped the churches in Canada all across. Him and Scott are working hand in hand like that for the church in Edmonton to help them grow again, to help me encourage, to bring in that spark that will build a church. A minister came in. In the South, we'd say, bless his heart. So you know I'm being discouraging right now, okay? That's usually what that means, right? I was just discouraging, bless their heart. So the minister comes in, bless his heart, and he says, if I'm going to take the job here, then Scott's got to go. And Shane, in his little wisdom, but little heart, big heart, says, how did you put that, Shane? I'm trying to think how you said that. Sounds pastoral. It was his church. Is that what he came back for? He was going to change it. It was a pastoral mindset. He wanted to run it his way. He thought he had a better way. Scott's way, it may have worked in the past, but now it's my place. And that fella lasted maybe 4 years. And just before he caused a split, I'd already left the ministry. So we had moved. Because that's where I was a minister for a time, before this guy came back. And I get a call. I'm traveling. I'm 14 hours from there. And I got a call, and they said, we let him go. He didn't have to tell me who he was. They had to let him go because he was a discourager. And he was hurting the church. So I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, well, how does this fit in with being an encourager? Garth, that was really a downer. That's how we started our class today. Well, you know what? Sometimes we have to have an example of what we shouldn't do before we can learn what we can and will do. And that's kind of what Barnabas had to do. And he did it more than once. If we go to 1 Corinthians 13, I'm just going to read 3 quick verses. So you can go there if you'd like. But the very first one is going to be 1 Corinthians 13:13. when we look at what an encourager takes, this verse wraps it like a, well, if you want to talk about the season, a present, puts a big old bow on it. In 1 Corinthians 13:13, it reads, discourager, they do misread because they will forget that encouragers will be able to move into faith, hope, and love. And it says, and now abide faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. 1 Thessalonians 1:3, remembering that without ceasing your work of faith, labor of love, and patience of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ in the sight of our God and Father. Faith, hope, and love. 1 Thessalonians 5:8, but let us who are the day to be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. The encourager puts those on every time they get up and start breathing in the morning. Not because it came by accident, but because Scott was helped by Brother Henry at times when he needed it, and he became the encourager. And so when we look at these lives, that's my example. I see Scott as that. I saw Scott when he did it here. He was encouraging us as well. Many of our speakers that are on the road, because they are the encouragers, are here to encourage us, to lift us up. And so the title of this area is A Renewed Mind Produces a Renewed Ministry, because we're the mind of the encourager. And so turn to 12:2 of the book of Romans, please. 12:2 of the book of Romans. It is so easy to be like everyone else. Whether we realize it or not, that could be happening in the church as well. How do I know that? So if I was going to ask you, and there's going to be a bit more interaction today. The first week I did 2 chapters. Last week, Curtis was given the task of 2 chapters, but we are now 1 chapter until we finish the rest of the quarter. So this is our end of our first quarter today already. So when I say that, we're going to slow down a little bit. When I say, what's an example of an encouragement? What would be a discouragement that we might have heard or seen? It doesn't have to be here. What would be an example of a discouragement that you've heard in the church? What would be the seed of discouragement? Oh, there's a good one. That is the way we've always done it. That is an excellent one, Jody. I don't like change, Jody says. Have we heard these before? Oh, we've already tried that. Thank you, thank you. See? I didn't have any of those in my notes, right? Because I don't want to be discouraging. Thank you all. You know. But that's true, right? Those phrases, they are crippling, aren't they? Now, on the side note is, how many times have we said them? No, quit stepping on my toes, right? I have. I've said them. I have. Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It is not hard to use those phrases. I don't want to repeat them again, right? They might come up again because I'm going to use y'all, right? But I don't want to use those phrases again because we can renew our minds and not be thinking that same way in the future. There was a group, and we all know them as being a very large number, that said, we can't take the promised land. They're giants. They wanted to kill the ones that said they could. It'll kill the church if we use those phrases all day long. That's the way we've always done it. Ooh, right? It doesn't make it right. And so thank you. And so Aubrey, the word association, Aubrey, our author, the master of linguistics, says, discouragers assume, encouragers examine. Discouragers will doubt. The encouragers will discern. How many times can we take a step back from a discouraging thought and thought, well, you know what, let me think this out a little bit. What's their motivation? And I think that's key right there. If we can look at the motivation and change the motivation, I think the discouragement drops down. That's how Barnabas thought. We know that. That's how he thought. Discouragers label. Encouragers lend a listening ear. Hear them out. Hear them out. They have reasons. Hear them out. Are you going to encourage somebody that is a little bit down and distraught by just hearing them out, do you think? Maybe. How many of you, and you feel free to show of hands, have sat down with someone that is really, really upset? You sit down, you listen to them, you talk to them, you kind of give them the other side of the story, and at the end of the conversation, they're not near as upset. I'm getting a show of hands. Because it happens all the time. You just did it, you pulled the role of an encourager because you were close to them and you cared about them and you didn't like where they were at. You didn't want them to stay there. Am I right? When you're in a discouragement rut, if you don't get out, it becomes a coffin. But you know there's a way to get out. And you can climb her out. How many of us have been stuck? Right? How many of us have, Miss Abby puts up her hand. Nobody else admitted it. But we've all been stuck, but Miss Abby says, me. Yeah. You know what? We've been stuck. And because you're here, I know you got out. That's kind of how you look at discouragement. We've all been there. We've all been in that rut. And we can get out of the rut. You know, the difference between the hole for the coffin and before the coffin gets in is you can get out of the hole even if you feel like you're dead in it and there's no hope. If the coffin's not in and the lid's slammed shut, you can get out. Now, back in the old day, they put the bell on, right? Because they weren't sure if the person was dead or not. They always put a bell, right? The bell tolls, right? You can get out. But even that's enough. You need help to get out of discouragement. You can do it. Because there's going to be somebody that is an encourager that can help you out. So, discouragers label, encouragers listen. Think about it this way. If you put on dark tinted glasses, everything looks darker. Even things that aren't. I'm too cheap to buy the transition lenses. Y'all are just like amazing when I see you walk outside. I say, oh, I'd like to have one of those. No, I don't. Can't afford those. So I got flips, right? Sometimes I don't put the flips back up when I take my glasses off when I get to work in the morning, and it's dark when I leave, and I'm going, man, it sure is dark out here. You know, whoa, it must be cloudy. And my wife, bring up the sunglasses. Oh, look at that. Now I can see, right? That's what it takes when you have dark tinted glasses. You got to lift the dark with the tint away. See the brightness that's actually around you is flipping up those clips. And so discouragement is tinted thinking. That's what we're talking about. Encouragers change the lenses, not the landscape. You're still in the same building at the same time. Scott Laird was in the exact same building that went from, I understand, I wasn't there when it happened, but they went from about 150, a congregation that had kind of been there, and I had this in one of the books that we were shared with some time ago. It was an illustration there. I shared it with a congregational meeting. I shared it with our leadership. In the book, a young lady goes up to our author, who is doing a master's in their congregation, to say, we can help this congregation grow. This little old lady, as sweet as she can, a smile on her face, says, we've always been 60, and we're always going to stay at 60, and there's nothing you can do to make us bigger than 60. Love you, brother, and walked away, right? 2 years after his master's was finished, the congregation was at 300 almost, and they had so many studies. They were every single night of the week, and everybody was involved. That's Brother Hambrick, by the way, Awakening a Sleeping Giant. And so when we look at this kind of thing, and we say the encourager changes the lenses, not the landscape, we're the same four walls here in North Jefferson for the last 25, 26, whatever years it is now. Why can't we grow and fill the building if we're encouraged to do so? And we know how. And that's kind of how you look at it. Barnabas saw growth where others saw trouble, more often than not. We read in Acts chapter 9, verse 26 to 27, that Saul was a threat. Why was Saul a threat to those disciples that Barnabas first was trying to encourage them to bring them in? What was wrong with the disciples when Barnabas walked in this brother Saul, who had become Paul? They knew his past. Was it a flowery, blossoming past? No. It wasn't nice. What was he seen as? A murderer? Very anti. Very anti-Church Christ. He was a discourager, Donna says. He was a discourager. Sure he was. And so Barnabas took him out of that, and he went to where he think he can actually bring him in, encourage another group, and it was the apostles. Did they think the same thing? Well, actually, they did. They did initially. They were saying, he's a paid assassin. What are you doing bringing him? You just brought the enemy into the camp. What are you thinking? That's discouragement, by the way, right? This is going to be a challenge. It's not what we're used to. It's going to be different. We haven't done it that way before. Why are we doing that now? Well, they brought Saul. They brought a paid assassin into their midst, into their sanctuary, where they're supposed to be safe. And then the apostles listened to Barnabas the encourager. And then we know that from there he went in and out. Scripturally, that meant they accepted him. And they brought him in. He introduced Saul to the disciples. They said, no way. Went over to the apostles, and the apostles said, tell us more. Really? Well, then why will he not be our brother? Because Christ made him one. So we have that, and then he went in and out. They're now comfortable with their new brother and fellow saint. When Barnabas went into the church in Antioch, here's the background on the church of Antioch. It's quite a ways from where the apostles are when they say, Barnabas, there's something going on in the church in Antioch. They are growing in leaps and bounds. I love that same book, Waking a Sleeping Giant, because in there, in the text, it says, if a church is really, really growing, there must be doing something wrong. Right? Have we heard that? Maybe in our own little voice, in our little mind. We're going to talk about little voices here today in a little bit. Well, I want to get there. I don't want to jump ahead. So, you got the little voice in your head telling these things. Well, you can restructure the little voice, okay? And so there's the little voices in their heads. The apostles say, hey, get over there, Barnabas, see what they're doing, because they're growing. Well, it wasn't that they were growing, because the church was growing. Even under all that suppression and all that, the discouragement that was all around them everywhere, they were growing. But not where there wasn't many of the originals. Antioch were a bunch of misfits. Antioch was a Gentile area. Antioch was not known for the Jewish population. And here's a church that was supposed to be Jew-centered, has a church in Antioch that is Gentile-centered, and they're growing in leaps and bounds. They must be doing something wrong. That's why they sent Barnabas. Barnabas, the encourager, was to go and see, what are they doing wrong? What are they doing wrong, Barnabas? Go find out. Infiltrate. Get in there. Let's see what they're doing wrong, and let's turn them back around to what they're supposed to be doing. Now, did Garth Johnson just go ahead? Did Garth Johnson just interject a bunch of his own thoughts into those verses? Yes and no. That is what the commentaries tell you. It's not all in there, but we know the geography, we know the time, we know the context of the church, and that is probably why they sent him. But we know that when Barnabas gets there, he goes ahead and he says, wow, they're growing. God's grace is here in this place. He saw it. Now, my question to you, I got this question, okay? Do you think they were all on target? Think about it, okay? Think about it. Was this church in Antioch bang on? It sounds like a trick question, but I think we all know the answer. What do you think? A bunch of Gentiles didn't know the Jewish ways, didn't know all the prophecies, maybe didn't know the men intimately that were there firsthand and showed them first home. It's exactly what happened. They may not even have met the people that were around the cross when he was hanging, and that they didn't know that the rocks had split, and they'd heard about the veil tearing from top to bottom, which was weird because somebody should have had to grab it and pull it from the bottom up. So this would have been another miracle. All these miracles were surrounded. They were all in the prophecies. And oh, by the way, they did lots around the cross. You should have been there, Sam. You missed it. But I saw it firsthand. Believe me, this is the Christ that died. How many of those Gentiles actually heard that? Yes, Jeff.
Well, just when you read in Acts chapter 11, and see that verse 19 when it gets about what happened to Stephen, they're dispersed, and then Paul and Barnabas and sent to Antioch. But by the time it gets down to the verse that they were all called Christians, what does Barnabas do? He departs to Tarsus to bring the one man to knew the overall very well.
Thanks, we're coming right there. Thanks. Jeff just jumped to the next section. Good job. Good job, Jeff. I'm not even going to repeat that because it's going to ruin my whole lesson. So those that aren't on there, no. Jeff, I'm just discouraging a little bit. I'm back now. I'm back. We're back. Okay. The student has become the, right? But what Jeff just said is right. He just read that when Barnabas went in and he saw God's grace there, he had a bunch of misfits. They weren't as guided as the rest of them that had seen it or heard it firsthand. What Jeff just said is right. As an encouragement, Barnabas saw what they needed. He didn't just say, good job, good job, good job, good job. I'm going to go back to my comfort back where the apostles are. Good job, see y'all later, but good job, right? He didn't just encourage them with a good job, good old boys. He said, I'll be right back. Went and got Paul. The Saul that we mentioned at the beginning. He went and got Paul. So Jeff kind of told us a little bit, so let's go ahead and add to Jeff. What would Paul do with all that excitement in Antioch? What would he do with it? Because we need to do it here sometimes. What's that?
He stayed there over a year teaching them those ways. But when you go back, I forgot to say that the man that were teaching them there was a Cyrene. Y'all remember who helped them cross the last part of the way?
Ah.
And I always wondered, the attachment to someone that you said was there. He's the one that went back to Antioch and was teaching the way of the Lord. What is the connection? The same area.
And so what Jeff's saying is we had a brother there that was probably there at the time and carried the cross, or as that was happening, the whole scene. So he saw it firsthand. So help me with this. Think about this here. What if we bring someone else in that was either also there or was killing those that said they were and would not change their way, who now was part of the way and could say, I was doing this. I was actually helping to clear them out. But I now have become Apostle Paul, and I'm here to help you to stay on the way. Just like your brother over here has been saying. He's right. And we are so excited for you all. I don't know if they said right from the top, from the get-go, we're going to stay a whole year. A year goes really quickly. Maybe it was in the plan. I don't think that's in the scripture where he says we planned on staying 1 year. It just says they stayed 1 year. And so here is an encouragement. When they get there, when Barnabas goes and he gets Paul and he comes back, they stay an entire year. That entire year would have been encouraging for them. It would have been knowledge-based for them. It would have built strength into that congregation. And as they're growing, now they're growing with more purpose. And then they have more instruction. And they have more firsthand knowledge. And they became better and better and better at what they did. Now you take that seed, and what do you have? You have a work. And the church in Antioch would have infiltrated many areas. It wouldn't have been just there. Over time. And it just took one encourager to show up at the door and say, good job, let's help. Let me go get somebody that's going to do it for us. And so even though Jeff went ahead, no, it's perfect. Does that make sense why an encourager is so important for us? That each one of us can do that? Each one of us has potential? That's what this is about. Encouragers choose faith over fear. We already said it, that courage is in the name. Encouragers. It takes courage to be an encourager. It takes courage to go against the negativity at times, if there is any. It takes time and effort. In 2 Timothy 1:7, I'm going to ask if you can go there. 2 Timothy 1, verse 7, we're talking about faith over fear. Years and years and years ago, I was probably 7, 8, 9, maybe. We had a campaign that came to Winnipeg. We are a mission field in Canada, whether we like it or not. We are a mission field. And so we would get these campaigns coming on a regular basis. In our congregation, we had a campaign, and then we waited 2 years. Now I must have been around 14 at the second campaign. But at that second campaign, we had gone from a congregation that was around 30 to 40. Within 2 years, we were close to 80. And we used what we had learned at the campaign, and we were going to the community, we were door knocking, we were having Bible studies, we were growing. We had a Bible ministry called the Joy Bus. The Joy Bus, we all know that if we've been around for a while. The Joy Bus, we had the Joy Bus ministry going on. Our congregation was at about 80. And when it topped off, it was about 110. Little congregation, small congregation. And if you've been to the Mount Vernon congregation and you walk into their auditorium, that was our building. Because a lot of the mission work was, let's go to Canada and build a building. It looks just like the Mount Vernon building. It's the same architects, just smaller. And if you don't know that, go to Canada. You'll see a lot of the congregations, the buildings just like ours here. So not this one, but others that are like Mount Vernon. So here we go. We're in this campaign, and we are having to get a jump start from all these encouraging young people and older people, and it was a real encouragement. The sound mind is steady, not jumpy. The sound mind is steady, not jumpy. The encourager comes in and he settles down the sound mind so that it goes one direction. That's what they did in that campaign. Here's the great thing. The other day, I was supposed to call, what's his name? Caden and Raul. I've never met Raul. Well, I guess I've been told I saw him at L2L, but if you don't know who that is, that's kind of the kingpin who's working with Caden and Groda. And his guidance is why they are doing these campaigns, right? Is Caden excited right now? Has he been encouraged? Has he come here and try and encourage us? Well, that's what Raul does. And I get on this call. I think I'm calling Raul about some guidance on a campaign to Canada in Edmonton, Alberta. Well, I get on there, and I understand this is common for Raul. I call in, and he says, somebody knows about you. I can see his smile, red face, laughing back there. So I go ahead. Thanks. So I go ahead, and I got on this call and says, oh, Brother Garth. Brother Garth has now joined us. It's a conference call. There's like 8 or 9 people on this conference call. I didn't know I was coming to the conference call. I thought I was calling my brother Raul, who I don't even know, right? And we're organizing a campaign for the Edmonton congregation, the one we were at. And so that's pretty cool. It's really going to encourage them. And the funny thing is, at the end of it, I'm in charge of all the lessons titles. That's Raul, right? So I'm encouraged to do that. So I did it. I took care of it, set it out. He said, well, if you guys had one 20 years and it was successful, can you get those topics that you had? It's like, well, I think it's a little different today than it was back then. But yes, I will. And by the way, it was not 20. It was closer to 50. So it changes. Time changed, right? But I did, slept on it, had a prayer, got up in the morning, and sent them, and got thumbs up all around. So I think they're going to follow the outline. It's very different than what we did 40, 50 years ago. So, but here's what we got. When the sound mind is steady, it's not jumpy. Faith-driven, not fear-driven. You become solid when you become the encourager because you know where you're going. You know where you've been, and you know what you can do. And you can pass that on as an encourager. And you can help things grow. Aubrey's word associations. Fear freezes. Faith focuses. You can be stuck just out of pure fear. Do not like the unknown. Fear blames. Faith builds. Fear will resist. Faith releases. These are the word associations that fit when you have the faith over fear. When Barnabas was sent to Antioch, this would have been the section where we talked about Paul. right? Paul went in there with no fear. I don't know if they had fear, but I think Paul removed it because of his encouragement, his direction with Barnabas' help. Barnabas didn't think that he was the man for the job. Barnabas wasn't about to go in there and beat the guy. He didn't want a territory. He didn't want all these things. Aubrey's word association for encourager that is thinking we and not me. An encourager is not going to think about himself or herself. He's going to be thinking about you and us and the work. They expand beyond themselves. And so Aubrey would say, self-focus shrinks ministry. Self-focus shrinks ministry. And other-focused ministry multiplies. These are things that are not just like, oh yeah. These are things like, yeah, that just makes sense. I've seen encouragers do that. They grew into that role. It didn't happen by accident. They grew into it like Barnabas did. Because ego crowds. Ego crowds out what could happen. When it's about me, when that minister came in and said, we don't need Scott anymore, within 4 years, they had to let him go. That's when I got that call. We finally, and that was the words, we finally got rid of him. Because he built camps. Caused a lot of damage before they let him go. Barnabas went in there with no ego because he knew that ego crowds. So he was the encourager that cleared. He was the encourager that cleared the way for the church to work in Antioch the way Christ planned it. Wouldn't that be the encourager you want to be? Why wouldn't we, right? And see, one of the things that I have thought about, and it came to me from one of my sisters, it came from my wife, and so I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. Well, what about the introvert versus the extrovert? How do you encourage as an introvert? How do you step out of your comfort zone? Oh, that's the rut. That's the hole in the ground. One way is to have somebody throw you a shovel and you dig your way out. It's going to be easier for some than others. A rut you can climb out. If you're stuck in a hole, you might have to dig yourself out. It might take some time, but you can do it because it's a ministry. It's not a request, it's a ministry. We are all to be encouragers. So some of us, it might take more than others. My wife is working with me all the time to be an encourager, right? I'm a piece of work. She's listening to this right now, okay? So, but an introvert may look for an opportunity in their mind to apologize for meeting a new visitor. And I'm going to use the same illustration both directions. I think this might help you, okay? And my wife gave this to me. So we have a visitor. Maybe they're sitting right over there, right there. There's nobody there right now. So let's just imagine in our mind there's a visitor right in there, a guest. I call them guests. They're not a visitor, they're a guest. Just sounds better, right? We have a guest over there. And you're in your home here, okay? And maybe you're sitting over here, and I'm going to say that's a good excuse. I'm over here, and I didn't get over there. So maybe it's the third week that guest has showed up, and you still don't know their name. But you're an introvert. So you just think, well, that's okay. Somebody else will do it. I don't have to do it. I'm not comfortable. Ooh. But take your mind, okay, and you turn off the mind of the discourager, and because an introvert can be a discourager, so can an extrovert. So I'm going to attack both sides of the fence here, okay? So introvert says, well, somebody else will do it. I don't have to step out of my comfort zone. But it's the third week, and they keep on showing up, and you keep on almost passing them in the foyer. So I can't use that excuse that I'm over there and they're over there because I met them in the hall, in the auditorium the second week. I just recognized because I had seen them. I said, ooh, what do I do? Well, here's what you do. Purpose. Purpose to say, you know what? I'm going to go over to that guest, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm sorry. I have seen you here 2 weeks, and I didn't come over and introduce myself. I'm Bill. Or I'm Jill. And if you need anything, I sit right over there. I'm pretty quiet. I kind of stay in my spot. But I just want you to know that it warmed my heart to see you here 3 weeks in a row. And I hope I get to see you again next week. But if you need anything, I sit over there, third row. Here's the extrovert. This is their apology, okay? Here's the extrovert. They have discouraged because they went to that guest, by the way, 3 times the first week. 3 times they went over there. And they said, hey, I'm da-da-da, I do this and I'm that, I've been here forever, or this or that. And yeah, whoo, I got to go, right? They didn't get to tell them their name. Okay, the next week, that happened 2 or 3 times that first week. Then the next week, oh, it's good to see you again. Da, 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 da. You know, I did this and I did that. See ya, gone, right? To the next, right? Because they're an extrovert and they make it look so easy. Still don't know the name of that guest. Still don't know what they do. Still don't know where they came from. But they sure know a lot about them. And they're so proud of that. The extrovert, right? Mean well. Is that 2 different sides of the fence? What happens if the extrovert realizes it? Maybe they hear this class. I don't know, right? Because they are extremes. We're talking extremes here. And I'm somewhere in between, by the way. I'll go over and talk to a guest, but I'm not comfortable. I'm going to do it anyway. Because I want to welcome them into our family. Because if we don't, that might be the 3rd and last. You only get 1 time to do a first impression. This is your 3rd. You can't do it anymore. They walk past you, and you didn't say nothing the week before. So you go over there as an extrovert. You say, you know what, I'm sorry. I don't even know your name. I've been telling you all about me. I'm going to go, can you please tell me about you? And you listen. If they say, well, I don't know what to say because they don't say nothing, say, well, where are you from? What's your name? What can we do for you here at North Jefferson? And stop. It's hard, but just hold back and listen, right? What can I do for you? Is that the first or second? It is so easy to get past the second bell. So just be an encourager. Take where you're at and know where you have to go. Think higher, see clear, help better. That's really what it comes down to when it's in the mind. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.